In a grand chamber, a distressing scene unfolds. Clara, a young woman of noble birth, stands transfixed before a large screen, her eyes reflecting the horrors displayed. The images assault her senses, people afflicted by a mysterious illness, their bodies twisted and contorted, while guards in hazmat suits move among them, their actions efficient and ruthless. Parents attempt to shield their children, their faces etched with fear and desperation. The room buzzes with the presence of onlookers, including Cynthia, a fierce companion to Clara, who bears witness to the unfolding tragedy. The atmosphere is heavy with anticipation as Clara, her voice steady despite the turmoil within, demands an explanation from the assembled noble heads. Their silence is deafening, each one frozen, unable to meet her gaze. It is Redford, a veteran commander, who finally speaks, his voice laced with a mixture of regret and resolve. He admits that while he anticipated the possibility of a rebellion, the extent of the horror that lay before them was beyond his imagination. Clara, her brow furrowed, questions why, if suspicion of a rebellion had arisen, the Royal Navy had not acted sooner. Redford, his expression grim, explains that their intelligence had been lacking and that the signs pointed more toward a conflict between houses. He concedes that the rebels had skillfully masked their true intentions, manipulating events to their advantage. It was not until House Vinta, or rather the Lady Gigelvinta, could no longer bear the weight of his conscience, that we received the information that revealed the true nature of our plight, he adds, his voice heavy with remorse. Lukacs Ishtal, a seasoned officer, enters the chamber, his gaze sweeping the room with a mixture of contempt and sorrow. Clara, her emotions warring within her, turns to him, seeking answers. Lukacs, his voice steady, addresses the nobles, his words laced with disdain. "You have brought this upon yourselves," he declares, his gaze fixing on each noble in turn. "Your greed and indifference have led to this catastrophe, and you will be held accountable." Cynthia, having recovered from the initial shock, steps forward, her sword drawn. Her anger is directed at the nobles, her protective instincts toward Clara fueling her rage. "You have attacked the second princess of the Astorion Principality," she accuses, her voice echoing in the chamber. "You stand here, claiming loyalty, when your actions have already marked you as traitors. My princess, give the command, and their heads will roll." Gawain Akolata, a proud and defiant noble, steps forward, his face flushed with anger. "You speak of loyalty and honor, yet you fail to understand the choices we faced," he retorts. "Had you been in our position, faced with the prospect of preserving the legacy of your house, you would have made the same decisions. We have given more than what was asked of us, and now you would condemn us for our dedication." Redford, his eyes narrowing, acknowledges Gawain's words but remains unwavering in his judgment. "Your houses have benefited from economic prosperity, and your contributions have been noted," he concedes. "However, your recent shortcomings cannot be ignored. The standing and gravitas you once held have been squandered, and your fate is now sealed," he pauses, his gaze sweeping the room, daring anyone to challenge him further. Natinza Everblade, her voice trembling, attempts to justify their actions. "The Arabians are to blame," she asserts, her eyes downcast. "They launched a covert attack upon us, using a fabricated virus to bring us to our knees." Clara, her anger rising, knows all too well the threat posed by the Arabian Commonwealth. They are conniving and scheming, it is true, she agrees, but even they would not inflict such cruelty upon us. She turns to Redford, seeking confirmation, her trust in his judgment unwavering. Redford, his face a mask of fury, snaps back at Natinza. "That is a blatant lie. Our intelligence shows no unusual movements from the Arabians. No infiltrations, no covert operations, nothing to indicate their involvement." He pauses, his eyes narrowing. "Even if we consider the possibility of rogue agents, why would they target low-tech worlds across the Principality? No, this devastation was caused by none other than your own greed and negligence." Clara, her mind racing, struggles to comprehend the full extent of the noble's betrayal. The silence in the chamber is heavy, each person present aware of the gravity of the situation. "Speak," she commands, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. "Tell me the truth, for I will not rest until I understand the full extent of your treachery." Tusko Homa, his face a mask of shame, steps forward. "My princess," he begins, his voice shaking, "I will tell you all that I know, for I would rather face your wrath than bear the weight of my silence any longer. He takes a breath, steeling himself for what is to come. It began with the discovery of a great mineral deposit on Hagstall, a world under the control of House Holma. As Tusko speaks, the pieces of the puzzle begin to fall into place. Hagstall, once a sparsely populated colony world, became the site of an unprecedented economic boom. House Holma, in their greed, exploited the planet's resources without regard for regulation, enlisting the support of other houses Everblade and Aculata, who provided machinery, equipment, and freighters. Together, they ravaged the planet, their actions unleashing a plague that knew no bounds. Redford, his face pale, takes a step back, understanding the magnitude of their crime. "You devastated an entire world," he accuses, his voice shaking with rage. "You ransacked it without care, violating every law established by the Principality. Habitable worlds are precious, and you reduced Hagstall to a barren wasteland." Clara, her eyes flashing with anger, shares Redford's outrage. "You put your profits before the lives of those under your care," she accuses. "How could you be so reckless, so indifferent to the suffering you caused?" She turns to the screen, unable to tear her gaze away from the devastation before her. "How many have died because of your greed? How many more will perish before this plague is contained?" Tusko, his shoulders slumping, can offer no defense. "My princess, we did what we thought was best," he whispers. "The honor of our houses was at stake, and we could not bear the shame of failing to contain the outbreak. We never anticipated the scale of this catastrophe." Natinza, her voice shaking, adds to Tusko's plea. "We have spent our personal resources to contain the outbreak. My princess," she says, her eyes pleading for understanding. "We have evacuated the infected worlds and are working tirelessly to gather a new workforce. We ask only for your mercy and the chance to make amends." Clara, her heart torn between rage and compassion, struggles to find her voice. The nobles before her, once proud and untouchable, now cower in the face of her wrath. She sees the fear in their eyes, but it does not sway her. "You speak of profits and honor," she says, her voice cold as ice, "while people lie dying and the very foundation of the Principality crumbles. How dare you?" Gawain, his face a mask of defiance, steps forward once more. "They are but commoners," he says, his voice laced with contempt. "Their lives are expendable, a small price to pay for the preservation of our noble blood. They exist to serve us, and their deaths are a necessary sacrifice." Clara's eyes widen as she hears her own words thrown back at her, spoken by Tusko Holma, the head of his house. "You think I care about mere credits," she shouts, her voice echoing in the chamber. "You destroyed a world, unleashed a plague, and left your people to die. How can you speak of honor when you have forsaken the very people you swore to protect?" Natinza, her face pale, provides a grim estimate. "According to our last calculations, 5.7 billion commoners have perished, my princess," she says, her voice trembling. "Along with them, 100 lesser houses and 2 minor houses were lost." Clara, her vibrant purple eyes fixed on the nobles, feels a hatred unlike anything she has known. "Kill them," she whispers, her voice carrying a weight that silences the room. "Kill them all." Redford, his eyes widening in shock, turns to her, but she silences him with a gesture. Cynthia, her blue eyes cold as steel, steps forward, her sword already stained with noble blood. The nobles, realizing the futility of their situation, accept their fate. Some charge at the Royal Marines, their bravery born of desperation, only to be cut down with ruthless efficiency. Others beg for mercy, their pleas falling on deaf ears. Cynthia, her face a mask of determination, shows no mercy as she carries out Clara's command. The nobles' cries for clemency go unanswered, their blood staining the chamber floor. Clara, her gaze fixed on Tusko, watches as he trembles before her, his shame and fear evident. "We will fix your mistake," she declares, her voice carrying the weight of a princess's authority. "Your house will live in infamy, a reminder of the consequences of betrayal." With a swift motion, she grabs Tusko by the throat, her royal blood dripping onto the floor. "This plague, this abomination, shall bear your name, the Holma smallpox," she says, her voice dripping with contempt. "Long may it be remembered as a testament to your failure." With a powerful push, she sends him reeling. And in an instant, Cynthia's sword finds its mark, ending Tusko's life. The room falls silent once more, the only sound the soft whirring of the screen as it continues to display the devastating images. Clara, her eyes fixed on the screen, takes in every detail, her mind processing the full extent of the noble's betrayal. The screen finally fades to black, leaving only a simple message from Ida Kagovinta, apologizing for his cowardice and hoping that his information had reached them in time. Exhausted and emotionally drained, Clara turns to Redford, her eyes pleading for understanding. Find every last member of their houses, she commands, her voice steady despite her fatigue. Not one shall be spared. Put bounties on their heads and ensure their names are erased from history. I want their neighboring houses to know of their fate, to serve as a warning. Redford, his face a mask of sorrow, nods in understanding. Yes, my princess, he replies, his voice heavy with the weight of her orders. Clara, her knees buckling beneath the weight of her emotions, falls to the ground, her tears a release for the turmoil within. Redford, ever the protector, kneels beside her, offering what comfort he can. She cries into his shoulder, her sobs a mixture of grief, rage, and determination. In that moment, she knows that she has become a princess worthy of her title, no longer a naive noble girl. In the quiet of her quarters, an hour before their departure, Clara recounts the events to Wyatt Staples, a trusted friend. And that, my dear Wyatt, is why I am known as Clara the Reaper, she says, her voice soft but steady. Why I am feared and despised by those who value honor and legacy above the lives of their people. Wyatt, his expression unreadable, listens intently, his silence a comfort to Clara. I see, he says, his voice calm. But I do not understand why you and Cynthia are hated. Your actions seem just, given the lives lost due to their negligence. Cynthia, ever the pragmatist, speaks up. Wyatt, her command led to the extinction of 3 great houses and 18 minor houses within a matter of weeks, she explains. Some tried to escape, turning to piracy, but even they were not spared. The other houses saw only a royal purging, their own greed and indifference blinding them to the truth. Clara, her gaze distant, recalls the aftermath. I immersed myself in my studies, determined to become the leader I needed to be, she says, her voice soft. I saw the error of my ways and vowed to never again be that foolish, self-centered girl. She turns to Wyatt, her eyes pleading for his understanding. Tell me, Wyatt, what does commoners obey, nobles lead truly mean to you? Wyatt, his expression sincere, answers without hesitation. It means that nobles know what is best, and it is our duty to listen and follow their lead, he says, his voice steady. Clara, amused by his honesty, shakes her head. No, Wyatt, that is not what it means, she says, her voice gentle. It is something most nobles have forgotten or twisted to suit their desires. It is a symbiotic relationship where nobles should support and provide for the commoners, and in turn, commoners should work to uphold their noble leaders. Wyatt, his brow furrowed in thought, considers her words. I have never thought of it that way, he admits. From early on, we are taught that a commoner's place is to obey without question. Clara, her gaze softening, reaches out and places a hand on his. That is where the system has failed, she says, her voice filled with conviction. It should not be so rigid and stagnant. There is room for interpretation, for growth, and for the betterment of all. As they sit in silence, the weight of their shared experience binding them together, Wyatt makes a decision. I am not leaving your side, Clara, he says, his voice resolute. I have nothing to lose by standing with you, and I would rather face the consequences than turn my back on you. Clara, her eyes shining with unshed tears, smiles at him. Then it is settled, she says, her voice warm. And I shall ensure that the chefs bake enough sweets to satisfy even your insatiable appetite. Wyatt, unable to suppress a laugh, returns her smile. Now that is something I care deeply about, he teases, his eyes sparkling with mischief. The pastries of the Principality had better watch out. Cynthia, ever the pragmatist, joins in their light-hearted moment. Fear the glutton duo, she jests, her eyes twinkling with amusement. Clara, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment, can only shake her head, a soft laugh escaping her lips. Shush, she says, her voice warm with affection for her dearest friends. It's under 20 million characters. In a grand chamber, a scene of devastation unfolds before Clara's eyes. The large screen displays images of suffering and despair, people afflicted by a mysterious illness, their bodies twisting in agony, while guards in hazmat suits move among them, their actions efficient and ruthless. Parents shield their children, their faces etched with fear, their cries echoing through the room. The onlookers, including Cynthia, a loyal companion to Clara, are visibly disturbed by the grim spectacle. Clara, her eyes reflecting the distressing scenes, demands an explanation from the assembled noble heads. Their silence is deafening, each one frozen, unable to meet her gaze. Redford, a veteran commander, speaks first, his voice laced with regret. He admits that, while he anticipated a rebellion, the extent of the horror before them was beyond his imagination. Clara, her voice steady, questions why the Royal Navy hadn't acted sooner. Redford explains that their intelligence had pointed to a conflict between houses, and he praises the rebels' skill in containing information. It is then revealed that House Vinthi, specifically the late Edgel Vinta, provided crucial information, unable to bear the weight of his conscience any longer. Lukacs Ishtal, a seasoned officer, enters the chamber, his gaze sweeping the room with contempt. Clara, her emotions warring within her, turns to him, seeking answers. Lukacs, his voice steady, addresses the nobles, blaming them for the catastrophe. Cynthia, having recovered from the initial shock, steps forward, her sword drawn, accusing the nobles of treason for attacking the second princess. Gawain Akalata, defiant, retorts that they had only acted to preserve the honor of their houses. Redford acknowledges their economic contributions but makes it clear that their shortcomings have sealed their fate. Natinza Everblade, her voice trembling, attempts to shift the blame to the Arabians, claiming they launched a fabricated virus. Clara, her anger rising, knows the threat posed by the Arabian Commonwealth. Redford, however, refutes this claim, stating that their intelligence shows no unusual movements. He accuses the nobles of negligence and greed, his voice laced with fury. Clara, her mind racing, demands the truth, her voice carrying the weight of a princess's authority. Tusco Homa, his face a mask of shame, steps forward. He offers to tell Clara everything, choosing to face her wrath rather than bear the weight of his silence. He reveals that the tragedy began with the discovery of mineral deposits on Hextol, a world under the control of House Homa. Their greed knew no bounds, and they enlisted the support of other houses Everblade and Aculata to exploit the planet's resources. Redford, his face pale, accuses them of devastating an entire world, violating the laws established by the Principality. Clara, her eyes flashing with anger, shares his outrage, demanding to know how they could be so reckless. Natinza, her voice shaking, pleads for mercy, explaining that they have spent their personal resources to contain the outbreak. Clara, her heart torn, struggles with her emotions. The nobles before her, once proud, now cower in the face of her wrath. She sees their fear but remains unwavering. "You speak of profits and honor," she says, her voice cold, while people lie dying and the Principality crumbles. "How dare you?" Gawain, defiant, justifies their actions by devaluing the lives of commoners. "They are expendable," he declares, his voice laced with contempt. "Their deaths are a small price to pay for the preservation of our noble blood." Clara's eyes widen as she hears her own words thrown back at her by Tusco Homa. "You think I care about mere credits," she shouts, her voice echoing in the chamber. "You destroyed a world, unleashed a plague, and left your people to die. How can you speak of honor when you have forsaken them?" Natinza, her face pale, provides a grim estimate. 5.7 billion commoners have perished, my princess, she whispers, her eyes downcast. Along with them, 100 lesser houses and 2 minor houses were lost. Clara, her vibrant purple eyes fixed on the nobles, feels a hatred unlike anything she has known. "Kill them," she whispers, her command carrying the weight of a princess's authority. "Kill them all." Redford, shocked, tries to reason with her, but Clara silences him with a gesture. Cynthia, her blue eyes cold, steps forward, her sword already stained with noble blood. The nobles, realizing their fate, accepted with varying degrees of bravery and desperation. Some charge at the Royal Marines, their attempts futile, while others beg for mercy, their pleas falling on deaf ears. Cynthia, her face a mask of determination, shows no mercy as she carries out Clara's command. The nobles' cries for clemency go unanswered, their blood staining the chamber floor. Clara, her gaze fixed on Tusco, promises to fix his mistake, declaring that his house will live in infamy. With a powerful push, she sends him reeling, and Cynthia's sword finds its mark, ending his life. The room falls silent once more, the screen continuing to display the devastating images. Clara, her eyes fixed on the screen, takes in every detail, her mind processing the betrayal. The screen finally fades to black, leaving a message from Ida Gelvinta, apologizing for his cowardice and hoping his information had reached them in time. Exhausted and emotionally drained, Clara turns to Redford, her eyes pleading. "Find every last member of their houses," she commands, her voice steady. "Not one shall be spared. Put bounties on their heads and ensure their names are erased from history. I want their neighboring houses to know of their fate." Redford, his face a mask of sorrow, nods in understanding. "Yes, my princess," he replies, his voice heavy. Clara, overcome with emotion, falls to her knees, her tears are released for the turmoil within. Redford kneels beside her, offering what comfort he can. She cries into his shoulder, her sobs a mixture of grief, rage, and determination. In that moment, she knows she has become a princess worthy of her title, no longer a naive girl. In the quiet of her quarters, Clara recounts the events to Wyatt Staples, explaining why she is known as Clara the Reaper. Wyatt, his expression unreadable, listens intently, his silence a comfort. Cynthia joins in, explaining that Clara's command led to the extinction of great houses, and some nobles attempted to escape, turning to piracy, only to meet their end. Clara, her gaze distant, recalls her realization of the error of her ways. She immersed herself in her studies, determined to become a true leader. She asks Wyatt what commoners obey, nobles lead means to him, and he provides an honest answer, believing nobles know best. Clara, amused, gently corrects him, explaining her interpretation of a symbiotic relationship. Wyatt, thoughtful, considers her words, acknowledging the failures of the system. Clara, her gaze soft, reaches out to him, grateful for his understanding. As they sit in silence, Wyatt makes a decision, choosing to stand by Clara's side despite the potential consequences. Clara, her eyes shining, smiles, and they share a light-hearted moment, their laughter a balm to their weary souls. And so, the story of Clara the Reaper unfolds, a tale of tragedy, betrayal, and the transformation of a princess who, in the face of horror, found the strength to rise above her noble birthright and become a leader worthy of her people's loyalty.